Yeah, g'day everyone. My name's Chris and I'm an alcoholic. Had a sobriety date December 20, 1990 in a home group, the How It Works, the Lullaby How It Works Big Book Step Study. It's online and there's three ladies here tonight that I've never met live before because they've always been in that little square box and they're here tonight and it's fantastic. So thank the organisation committee, and I've been involved in many committees over the year and it takes a hell of a lot of work to put these things together, and we don't do it for accolades, you know, we do it because we love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. It's given me a life that I certainly couldn't manufacture for myself, and so I'm, you know, only too happy to put back in. And I've got a sponsor that constantly reminds me that I'll never ever be able to repay Alcoholics Anonymous the debt that I owe it, and it's true. Yeah, great to hear my wife. You know, I'm her biggest fan. She throws me under the bus a bit, but that's okay. Because that's the truth. That's the honest truth. You know, I'm not up here to tell anything else other than the truth. And I think when we lay ourselves open to the truth, we connect better with other people because I can identify with that. And, you know, Mandy got up this morning and bent over to put her shoes on and she done her back and was in agony. And I had to help her get in the car, but she wanted to speak tonight. And so, you know, I think it takes an extra effort to come here. She's sitting in there in pain. See, hon, I don't throw you under the bus. I keep telling you, it would have been a good bit of information if you told me he was a champion kickboxer before I went over and tackled him. She missed out that bit. So my job is to talk about step one, and I try and start off with a joke first, and they're always corny, but you know it's good to get a laugh because it makes me feel a bit more comfortable. And I read this morning, you know, did you hear about the scarecrow that got an award? It's because he was outstanding in his field. No good? So I said I have a sobriety date December 20, 1990. I got here when I was 26 and, you know, I didn't really want to come here. Ultimately, I came here because I wanted to get my wife back, and I knew I kind of, you know, I got into a lot of trouble and I knew drinking was a problem, but drinking was the solution. It wasn't the problem. And so it can't be drinking. But, you know, when your wife leaves and takes the two, you know, your family starts to crumble and they go, you know, you're sort of left by yourself. And so I wandered into Alcoholics Anonymous and you know, looked around and didn't like any years because you're all freaking happy, and you certainly didn't like the picture of Alcoholics I had in my head, I can assure you of that. And I took a look around and I looked at those things on the wall there and I couldn't make any sense of them. And I'd hear people say, and over the years I've heard people say, oh, well, if you've come to Alcoholics Anonymous, you've done step one, because, you know, you've admitted. And for a while I hung on to that because I can tell you about me drinking, Mandy, you know, that's one lock-up. There was another 5 or 6 after that. For, you know, I lost my licence when I was 22 for .05 because I was a drink driver. I drove drunk, you know. And funny thing about being powerless over alcohol, you know, I hit a bloke one night and lucky I'd had a couple of drinks and I decided to go home. That didn't happen very often, and I was driving down Hoddle Street, Collingwood, and if you know that on a Saturday night, it's packed. And I had a green arrow and I was doing a right-hand turn and a guy stepped out in front of me and I straight into him. He'd gone up in the air and I thought I've killed this bloke. And I pulled over and I'm trying to get him. He's drunk, he's blind, stinking drunk. He's just stepped out and I've hit him and I'm trying to get him off the road because I want to take off. I want to get out of here because that's what I do. I run when I do something stupid because I don't want to suffer the consequences of it. And police are showing up and they've got all the Hoddle Street blocked off and it's a nightmare. It's on the news. And I'm thinking, God, anyway. So to end that story, I got home and I swore I would never drink and drive again. It frightened the living hell out of me. And the cops rang me the next day, I'm thinking he's died. And they said, no, we got one, your car's not registered, and they got me registration wrong. I said, oh, how is he? So he's got a hangover, he's fine. And I swore black and blue I was not going to drink and drive again. 2 weeks later, I'm drinking and driving again. It's a funny thing, isn't it? When we've heard the stories about, I eat food and it makes me vomit and I never touch that food again. Well, I had those experiences. My first big drink was, and I should have seen the signs early because they were there. I went to a football club when I was 16 and I couldn't buy alcohol, and I conned these older girls into buying me 12 cans. And I'm a bit old. I'm older now, I'm older now. And back then, they were the old steel beer cans and they had a terrible taste. They tasted tinny. But, in the doctor's opinion, it says, men and women drink because they like the effect produced by alcohol. I don't care about the taste. Doesn't worry me. You get the first one down and I'm not worried about the taste anymore because I've set something in motion inside me that I don't really understand. And I don't remember much that night, but there was times I think I was dancing on tables with no clothes on and drank very, very quickly. And I remember getting woken up in the change rooms and I'd passed out on a bench much like that and the whole floor was covered in vomit. I'm lucky I didn't drown in my own vomit. That's one time. There's a few more times that come on from there that I passed out drunk and vomited. And I remember getting home and I remember my mum, she found me in the shower, and I'd fallen asleep in the shower because I was trying to wash all the vomit off me and that look of disdain on her face. Because she warned me, a couple of years before, and don't turn out like your old man. Please, Chris, don't turn out like your old man and don't drink. And I don't know about you people, but when people tell me don't do something, I might have been interested in it before, but now you've told me not to do something, now I'm very interested in why you're telling me not to do that. And I still do it today, I walk past, and it says do not touch the wet paint, and it's like, I've got to touch the wet paint, it's like, so that's just me. So I had no intention of drinking until she said don't turn out like your old man and don't drink. And, I'm not blaming her, but that's just the way I'm built. And that look at disdain, and I said, I'm never going to do it again, Mum. And I'll have $1 for every time I said that over the next 10 years. Never going to do it again. And funny thing is that when you're in the sickness of that and you wake up with that guilt, shame and remorse and that knot in the stomach and that, Jesus subsides quick when you start to remember, geez, I was pretty cool, I was talking to the girls and I was doing all right. I was dancing, I felt like the real Chris come out to play, that shy introverted kid come out to play, and I forget about the 2 hours of vomiting and feeling crook, because I laser focusing on the good bits, and this was repeated over and over and over again, and sooner or later you do that long enough, you're starting to be able to drink more and vomit less. I guess that's the goal, isn't it, to drink more and vomit less, but. And Mandy talked about, she used to drink and she was able to pull it up. And I could never do that. And I could. It's funny, in the doctor's opinion, it says, when the abnormal's done often enough, it becomes the normal. And I'm looking at her thinking, there's something wrong with her. Why isn't she drinking like me? Isn't that funny? I'm not going to look at, there's something wrong with my drinking, I'm going to look at the way she's drinking. And so I had lots of cases like that. I just pointed at everyone else who wasn't drinking like me, and there's something wrong with them. There can't be something wrong with my drinking, it took me a long time. When they took that licence off me, now they've taken an idiot off the road, but now he's on the streets drinking, and so now I'm getting locked up for drunk and disorderly all the time. I just seem to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. I think I was drunk and fell asleep on the tram going home, and next minute I wake up, I've got a copper under each hand and they're wheeling him into the Secure police station. I'm thinking, what's the matter? It's like, mate, you're drunk in a public place. Your fly's hanging down and we're locking you up. And I don't look at my behaviour, I want to blame the coppers, it's all their fault. And so, I can cite many, many cases that to the point, where it brought me to my knees. Well, I thought it brought me to my knees, and I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I stood up here. I was around for I didn't like AA, but, you know, I thought, well, you know, someone said at my first meeting, give it a go for 30 days, Chris, if you don't like it, you can always go back there and have your crap back, and then walked off. And I thought, that's a bit harsh, but anyway, I'll give it a crack. And I guess the one thing I did right early days in Alcoholics Anonymous was I did lots of meetings. And I used to stand up here and say, my name's Chris and I'm an alcoholic, because all you people did. And I want to fit in here because I don't fit in out there, and they don't want me out there. And if you don't want me in here, where am I going to go? And you know, and so I stood up here and said, my name's Chris, I'm an alcoholic, because all you people did, and I didn't understand it. I'd heard the disease concept of it, but I was trying to hone in on all the stupid things you did when you got drunk. Like, oh yeah, I did that, and yeah, I did that, so I must be an alcoholic. And as Mandy beautifully put in her story, you know, I've learnt over the years that, you know, that I'm not an alcoholic because of all the crazy shit I do. You get a normal person drunk enough and they'll do stupid stuff. You know, you can get none drunk enough, and I'm sure if you get her drunk enough, she'll dance on the table nude too if you're kind of into it. Doesn't make her an alcoholic. Just because I got, you know, smashed cars and did all crazy shit when I was drinking. That's just consequences of my drinking. And I didn't understand that for a long time, and you know, I said I was surrendered when I come in. I thought, yeah, got step one, I'm surrendered, you know, yep. And you know, 3 years sober, I went home one night, and Mandy said to me, I liked you better when you were drinking. And I couldn't argue with her. Because I liked me better when I was drinking. Because at least when I'm drinking, there's some kind of manageability in that, isn't there, really? Because I get drunk, pass out, wake up, do it over and over again. There's some kind of manageability in drinking and blacking out and passing out and waking up. When you take that away, I'm unpredictable, because now I've got all this emotional stuff coming up, and I don't know how to be a husband. I don't know how to be a father. I started drinking at 16, and they say we stop, you know, we have the mentality of wherever we stop drinking, and so I'm 27 now, and I'm like a 16-year-old. I don't know how to be a father, I don't know how to be a husband, I don't know nothing. You know, the old timers just say, I think you better go home and spend some time with your wife. And I go, what for? That's the extent that I know about. And, you know, we used to sit there and I'd say, okay, I'll spend the night with my wife, and we'd sit across the table from one another and just look at one another, because we've got no communication skills. I don't know. How do you talk? Right? And so, you know, I was brought to my knees at 3 years sober. If I thought I was surrendered when I first came in here, I was surrendered at 3 years, I can tell you. I was in the right old mess. I thought, if someone tells me, don't drink one day at a time and get to meetings, I'll freaking pull a gun out and blow their head off, because that's not working for me. I'm worse now than what I was when I first came into AA, and I haven't had a drink for 3 years. And so when they talk about that, you know, that we have an illness that it's still growing in me whether I'm drinking it or not. If I don't treat that illness, it gets worse whether I'm medicating it or not. And I'm a perfect example of what that was at 3 years. And I got brought to my knees. I had a knee operation and was given a general anaesthetic, and I'd had nothing in my system for 3 years, and I went off my head. Absolutely off my head. I had nothing in my system, and she wants to go, and it's like my life's falling apart, and I don't know what to do. And I ran into a friend of mine that had been sober 3 years, and same time as me, and this guy's on fire, and he was happy about being sober, and he said, you don't look too good, Chris. And I said, I'm not. I want to kill myself, mate. And he goes, have you done the steps? I said, oh, I've done step 1, 2, 3. He said, really? What's an alcoholic? And I started rattling off all the stupid things. He said, have you read the big book? And I said, yeah, I read it. I said, the guy in there thinks I'm an idiot because he keeps telling me the same thing over and over, but in a different way. And funny thing, us alcoholics need to be told that. We need to be told in different ways to get us to understand it. And he walked me through the doctor's opinion that night, and he told me more, and I understood more in an hour than I ever got in 3 years in Alcoholics Anonymous. He talked about having this physical allergy to alcohol. He talked about this phenomenon of craving, and he talked about it in layman's terms. There's a line in the book that says, you know, the next problem drinker is properly armed with the facts about himself can generally win the confidence of someone very, very quickly. He says, until this happens, little or nothing can be done. This guy won me because he talked about, you know, this unquenchable thirst. Now, I know what that is. I know what unquenchable thirst is. I often laugh when I'm thirsty today, and I'm quite thirsty now. I didn't bring my bottle of drink up here, but if I'm thirsty, I have a drink and the thirst goes away with water, yeah? I don't sit there and drink 27 cans of water. You know, but when I start to drink alcohol, geez, I get the taste, eh? And I think I'll have another one. And another one turns into another one, and another one turns into another one, and I get quicker and quicker and quicker, and all of a sudden you guys aren't drinking fast enough for me, so I'm in 3 different shouts at one time, and then terror, they're shutting the bar. So I've got to find somewhere else to go. And my sponsor puts it brilliantly. He says, the funny thing about when you're in the midst of a craving, you really never know you're there, do you? Because while you're feeding that beast, you don't know you're in a craving, do you? Because if you're feeding it, doesn't feel like a craving, does it? But the moment you take that stuff away and I can't get it, now I know I'm in the grip of a craving. Yeah. So I understand all that because that's what happened to me. There was times back in my day, pubs that weren't open Sunday. I know that's a shock to you young ones, but pubs weren't open on Sundays. So if you didn't buy enough alcohol on the Saturday night, you're screwed Sunday unless you know somebody. We call them the sly grog shops, that you used to have to know somebody who knows somebody, you know, wink, wink, and go and buy alcohol anyway. Or there'd be a Sunday barrel on, because someone was always going to jail, so they were always having a barrel to raise money for and I went to all of them. And we had quite a few at our place, I can tell you. Anyway, we had a big one Saturday night, and it went into the night, and then Sunday, of course, you got to get up, and I didn't know it was, you know, having the morning drink, because you just drank, didn't you? When you felt sick, you drank, because it's the solution to my problem, it's not the problem. And the barrel ran out about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm just getting started. And I rang around everywhere in desperation to try and get more alcohol. I rang every publican I knew, and they think, what's this dickhead doing? But we don't care, do we, what we look like? When I'm in the grip of this craving beyond my mental control, I don't care. Fear just subsides. And I couldn't get in. And I was on the phone to the last publican, and I look up on top of the cupboard, and my dad had been to Darwin 5 years earlier, and he bought me back one of those big Darwin stubbies. Remember the big ones? Yeah. And I don't know how it finished up there as an ornament. It was about 5 years old, and it hadn't been refrigerated, but it was sitting up on top of this cupboard. And I'm looking at it going, it's all right. So I got it down on the ice and drank it. Is that normal drinking? Because I'm in the grip of a craving that I have no mental control, and I need it, and I need it right now. And I understand that a doctor's opinion says, you know, as layman, this will mean nothing to people who don't suffer from that physical allergy, but as ex-problem drinkers, it makes perfect sense, and it'll start to explain to you why, for many things that you can't explain. And it started to explain to me why it was that I always drank beyond most times. I'm not sure, there was times that I set out to get blind, but most times I drank beyond where I wanted to go into blackout, all the time. And this guy said to me, he goes, how many drinks does it for you, Chris? I said, what do you mean how many drinks does it for you? He said, you know, when you have a certain amount of drinks and you get to that where everything's, it's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. And you're cool, calm and collective. You can talk to the girls. You can make good conversation. You can rule the world. I said, about 5 drinks used to get me there. He said, well, why did you always drink beyond that into oblivion? Because I can't control it once I start. So I started to understand and get an idea of physical craving. The doctor makes it very, very clear. And so a couple of things that I've learned along the way over my 33 and a bit years experience. If alcohol's your problem, you're in the wrong place. Because if alcohol's the problem, all you got to do is stop drinking and your problems go away, yeah? Get rid of the problem, no more problems. I stopped drinking and the problems start because I don't do sobriety very well. Alcohol is just a symptom it's just a symptom of an illness that I have. I suffer from alcoholism. And the doctor says that any picture that leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. I said before about, and I'll try not to get on my high horse because I get a bit. You should have seen me in my alcohologist stage when I was beating people over there with a big book. The doctor says that, any picture that leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. I said before about that I was trying to identify with the crazy shit when we were drinking. The one thing that we all have in common if we identify as an alcoholic is the phenomenon of craving, and that's it. That's it. If you've got that, you're in. If you haven't got it, like Mandy said, she doesn't have it. I often say she abuses alcohol. She's made a decision now she doesn't want to drink because she reckons it interferes with her spiritual life. Really? Really? You can do that? Because she used to have it, we'd go out and she'd have a glass of wine, and I used to watch her. We'd be at a restaurant and she'd have that glass. She said, I'll get a glass of wine. She said, can you put ice in it? To the waiter. Put ice in wine. Like, that's alcohol abuse, isn't it? It's like... And she'll sip the wine and eat and talk and whatever, and then leave half a glass there and says, come on, let's go. What? I never left any alcohol. There's alcohol there, I'd be drinking it. And so my drinking experience is quite different to hers, and the doctor says that this phenomenon of craving never occurs in the average timber drinker. Never. So never means not once, ever. And so I started to see that she, normal drinkers drink very, very differently to the way that I drink, and I started to get an understanding of what this phenomenon of craving is. So, that's the good news. I've got a phenomenon of craving that once I start, I can't stop. What did Clancy used to say? I've got something inside me that's broken. It's called an off button. And it's true. And so all I've got to do is not drink. Yeah? If I just don't drink, I won't activate that allergy, and then Bob's your uncle to a sweet. But the problem is, I have this other part that talks about it more about alcoholism, about this peculiar mental twist, this strange mental blank spot. It talks about, gives it about 5 different names in the big book. And well, what's that? And so he started to talk about, how many times did you make the promise that you weren't going to drink today, and you rolled home drunk that night? Pretty much every day. Were you able to ever give it up for a while? Yeah. When things were bad and she's sleeping in the other room, okay, I'll be a good boy, and I'd get a couple of days up or a week, and for some unknown reason I went back drinking again. Well, what happened? It's because my mind convinces me that it's a good idea to do it. So it never remembers the bad stuff. I don't know about your mind. My mind goes back to when it was all fun. Remember that time, Chris? It'll be like that again. And the trouble is, I spent most of my last years of my drinking trying to jumpstart the good old days, and I can't do it. I never ever got back to what it was like when I was having a bit of fun with it. And it doesn't matter how many times, I can give it away for, a week, a month. I never go back to where I first started. In fact, most people, because I talk to people that go out and bust and say, how'd you go? And did you go back to, when you first started? Oh, no, they go, it was worse. I was worse. So again, that shows me that it progresses in me whether I'm drinking it or not. And so I started to see this mental obsession, and my sponsor puts it brilliant, and I love the way he uses the term, because that's what happened to me. He says, I used to promise Mandy with all my heart that I wasn't going to drink today, and I said, I'm going to come home tonight, we're going to sit down and we're going to sort this out. And she'd go, oh yeah, no worries. And my sponsor said, you can put me on a lie detector test and I'll pass it every time, because I believe the lie that I'm not going to do it again. I believe it. And somewhere in between making that promise, some knucklehead says, Chris, want to go to the pub for lunch? Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And away I go. And, you keep doing that often enough, and you start to think very poorly of yourself. I start to think that I can't even stop, for my wife, and I had a baby. I can't even stop for that. So you start to think pretty poorly of yourself, and I started to think pretty poorly of myself, and I get into that, shame, and I think I'm nothing but a piece of shit, and And guess what takes that away? More drink. So we get on this cycle, and he drew a cycle on a bit of paper, and talked about, you know, what happens when I start to drink and I go on this spree binge bender, and he says, you know, sooner or later you wake up, Chris. And how did you wake up? I said, I was always freaking, you know, I got up to stuff I shouldn't have done, and, you know, I always wake up, you know, guilty, shameful and remorseful, and I swear I'm never, you know, I hammer out that alcoholic national anthem. Never again. And the big book talks about that we get into a state of restless, irritable and discontent. And I'll add to that too, because it talks about more about alcoholism, about Jim and Fred's story. And, you know, most times I'm in this state of restless, irritable and discontent. They're three words that you can, describes every aspect of me, life unmanageability and untreated alcoholism, you know, restless, uneasy, irritable, easy annoyed, discontent, never satisfied. Sound familiar? And I get into that state, and the only thing that staves that off is more alcohol. So it's not good news, is it? And it's not meant to be good news. It's not meant to be good news. Step one, I believe, you know, now that I fully understand it, that I'm going to drink again no matter what. If I just think that I've got step one and understand step one, you're in trouble, because I'm going to drink again. If I understand, you know, Mandy talked about being powerless. If I'm truly powerless over something, it means I have absolutely no power over it. There's another line there that says, for reasons yet obscure, we've lost the power of choice when it comes to alcohol. I can't bring into my mind with sufficient force the memory or suffering and humiliation of a week or a month ago. Sound familiar? Make promises, forget about, you know, crashing cars and, you know, doing stupid things, and I'm never going to drink again because I did that again. It doesn't seem to come into my mind. I never heard anyone describe that from the floor of Alcoholics Anonymous until I read it in the big book of AA. So I start to understand some of the lingo in here now when I go through that book, when they talk about one's too many and 100's not enough. I used to think, what are you talking about? I understand what they mean by that today, by, you know, having those two parts of the illness. And you know, I believe today step one's designed to do that. It's designed to back me into a corner so I have nowhere else to go. Because there's no hope in step one. It's actually a hopeless step. It's designed to, you know, get me to my knees. And the funny thing, I don't know how much time I've got. There's 200 black bits up there. I know because I've counted them when there's been a boring speaker on, so. Of those 200 black bits up there, it takes 103 pages in the big book to give instructions to it. Okay? And if you want to put that in terms, because there's other parts of our literature say that step one is the most important step out of all the steps. And it is. It's the only one that we have to do 100%. The rest we can fiddle and fumble our way through and make mistakes, but ultimately step one is the most important step that we do, because it's the foundation stone from which we build our recovery on. And so if you put that in context, 103 pages to give a description and give some instructions on how to do each step. There's 44 pages plus the doctor's opinion, which makes it, I think there's 11 in it. So it's over 53 pages that only deal with step one out of 103 pages. You think the authors are trying to tell us it's pretty important? Because there's only a couple for step two, and I could rattle off the figures. The two steps that have got the most explanation are steps 1 and step 12. Funny about that, isn't it? Funny about that, two of the most important steps. And, you know, I didn't understand that, and I've got 10 minutes, have I? So, to summarise, so, you know, other sponsors say if you're just doing the steps off the wall, you've got an off-the-wall program. And it's true. You know, I can try and figure and work that out myself, or I can actually look at our literature and see, you know, what the early members were trying to convey to me. And so what I understood was that, you know, in those first 3 years, I didn't have step one. Just because you walk through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous and say you're an alcoholic does not necessarily mean you're an alcoholic. Just because you come through and say that and admit that doesn't necessarily mean that you got step one. In the book, it talks about that we have to fully concede to our innermost self through alcoholic. That's a big difference to just admitting it, isn't it? Fully concede to our innermost selves in here. Not to you guys. I can stand up here and do, somersaults and say, I'm an alcoholic. But I have to fully concede in here, and I can't do that without going over my experiences and start to see where I'm totally powerless over this stuff. They give us some other warnings through their self-knowledge. You can get. I've seen a lot of people leave Alcoholics Anonymous because they get a lot of I know what's wrong with me now. I just won't do it. And they leave and they go back out there and drink and wonder why they did, because self-knowledge is useless. Bill Wilson had the same experience. He said, sure, that's the answer, self-knowledge. And he drank again. So understanding that and knowing that ain't going to keep you sober. More good news, eh? But that's what step one, I was taught, if I say I've got step one and I'm happy about it, we ain't got step one, Chris. Because you should be pretty sad about that. There's absolutely nothing you can do to keep yourself sober. And how do I know that? Because I tried and tried and tried to get sober and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it till I got here. Unmanageability. Mandy talked about it. I had a sponsor that goes, read page 52 of the big book, Chris, if you want to know what unmanageability is. How are you going in all those areas, those bedevilments? And I'd ring her up and go, they're pissed off with you. She goes, read page 52 of the bedevilments. How are you going there? It's like... So you read page 52 and it gives you a pretty good idea on how you're travelling, eh? Having trouble with personal relationships, full of fear, can't seem to make a living, can't seem to be of help to other people. So I'll tell a quick story and I'll shut up. I can tell a lot of quick stories because you don't get to hang around this time and not have some funny stories, because I get to sponsor a lot of guys, and I was trying to help this guy once, and he was a serial buster, and I think he got about 3 or 4 years up, and I tend to attract people that have been around for a while that have busted, or they've been around for a while that want help, and that's fine. Just as well we're all different in here, eh? If we're all exactly the same and all had the same experience, we'd be just like churning them out like, a production line. But we're all got our own different, and we all... So I'm working with this guy, and I love this guy because he's a bit like me. He's a smart ass. And he's got enough knowledge to, because he's been around a while, but he can't stay sober. And so I just pull out, let's go to page 52. How you going in all those areas? He said, fine. Really? So let's go through this. You're not having trouble with personal relations? No. I said, didn't your wife just throw you out of the house? See, delusion's a funny thing. When we're in it, we don't see it. And so they're reflections of me, because that's what I'm like. I can get deluded about what the real truth is. Before I come up here, I always say a prayer and say, God, please help me be of maximum service to you and the people around. Please help me tell your truth, not Chris's truth, because sometimes Chris's truth is pretty warped. So last story. I was 10 years sober, and I stopped doing the stuff, and because we get great lives here. You get great lives here, and Mandy's sponsor often says, don't let the life AA gave you take you away from the AA life. And it's so true, because we get big lives here, and it's easy to take our foot off the gas and go, well, I'm doing okay now, I don't need to do as much, and I don't need to, thanks AA, I'll be seeing you, And I was like that at 10 years, and I was lucky God's put the right people in my path at the right time, and I met this lady who probably saved me life, because I was back where I was in 3 years, I was again in 10 years. So there's no let up on this thing. We get a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual program. Well, that's been my experience anyway. So we're going through step one, and she line by line, did this happen to you? Tell me your experience about that, because she said, are you an alcoholic? I said, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. And she said, why are you an alcoholic? So I rattle off, because of the phenomenon of craving and the mental obsession. She said, they're just words. What's your experience with that? No one ever asked me that before. And she said, what does phenomenon of craving feel like, Chris? Explain to me. And I couldn't answer her. She said, I want you to go and look at your drinking. I'm not going to assume you're an alcoholic because you've been in here 10 years, and I want you to really look at that, because you want to have a first step experience. And So I started looking. And she said, also look at stuff that's going on in your life today. And so I went back through drinking, and I started to see, you know, that I had that craving, and it was very different because I compared it to normal drinkers anyway. So I thought, what's going on in my life today that I can compare it with? And Mandy gave some great examples. And our youngest, who's not young anymore, he's about 35, so he didn't like school, hated school, absolutely hated it. Would never do his homework, and you know, he was just did not like school. And we tried everything. Well, I tried everything. I tried bribing him, yelling at him, doing his homework for him. I was a bit pissed off I didn't get A's for some of the assignments I sent in for him, and I'm trying everything, and yelling and screaming and going off my head because I want him to do well, because if he doesn't do well, you're going to think I'm not a good father. You're going to not think of me as being, and so I said to Mandy one day, we're going to work, I said, I don't want to wreck my relationship with my son, he's at that age. And so coming home from work, we've got a plan. I said, right, you know what, we're just going to let him go. He needs to know I've only ever learnt through consequences. We're going to let him suffer the consequences of not doing his homework. It's him. Well, I've got to stop trying to. So we've identified the problem, and we've got a solution. So we're driving home, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself, thinking, right, that's it. Frees me up. If you want to talk about handing over, I'm not going to. So we get home, and we're all happy, and I walk in the door, and I go, "G'day, mate, you done your homework?" Man, he looks at me like, are you... What? And I started to understand what real powerlessness is. And she said, how's that any different from when you said you weren't going to drink again and you kept picking up again? Thanks very much, Orlando.